Okay. 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 I guess we're having troubles with getting onto the radio. Um, our uh, our Indian rig way of doing it is falling apart, but that's fine. Um, if you're just tuning in, we're having trouble getting onto the Thunder radio, but because our Indian rig setup is it's it's got some issues, but that's fine. So again, as customary, Nitsidapya, let's start off with Timwishka. Ayos bad. Ayos pumita pigs, not to eat pigs. Ayoch to noxious. Noch mistaps goes. Any say pumapi. Ki gonna totokapsen. Ayos bad. Noch not to is to do. Noch got to is to do. Ganetapi. Anum ksach. Koi. Tuistutus miksi aksawaksi tapiks. Kamutan again. So a word for COVID that I heard that is learned is stunatotkapsen. Stunatotkapsen. It means the powerful sickness. Stunatotkapsen. So a word for diabetes is not pinyoeotkapsen. The sugar sickness. Not pinyoeotkapsen. But one of the things I want to do today is talk about shame. Bitquitsit means don't feel ashamed. Bitquitsit. Don't feel ashamed. Then you say, I don't feel ashamed. So bitquitsit. A lot of times we have those double consonants. So bitquitsit. Bitquitsit. And you'll get it. Don't feel ashamed. And that's what I want to mention is don't feel ashamed for not knowing Nitsi books. Because any napita pigs the trickster people rooked us. You know. They started teaching their language, not people, the trickster language. You don't hear the real talk much anymore. It's not our fault. Don't feel ashamed. One of the reasons why it's like that is it was in the colonial power's best interest to get us all speaking one language. which is interesting because somebody was asking me yesterday about the way that American native tribes have treaty rights and sovereign rights, limited sovereignty, and they asked me, would you trade in all that limited sovereignty for full cultural a full cultural nation? To have your language back, would you trade in all those treaties, like your sovereignty, to have your language back completely? And I thought, like, you can't do that. Like, if your language is back fully, sovereignty comes with it. And I know they were trying to do like a mental mind game or something, like a mental exercise, but it doesn't work that way. When you have your language, you have sovereignty. There's no separating the two. The two are interconnected. And with that being said, I'm gonna read a little bit from George Catlin. He was the first American ethnographers, and what's interesting about him, from my memory, is he actually went on a he went onto the North American plains to study the wild horse because it was a time in history when they thought it would be the only time in history where the horse would be wild. Because again, he was domesticated all in Europe and all throughout all these other lands. And then as they dispersed throughout the plains, there was wild horses. So they thought it would be an interesting thing to capture a little bit of their culture. It's thought that the horses dispersed after the Pueblo Revolt, and that is when they defeated the Spaniards out of southern, in the area known as the United States now, and they kicked them out of the area for about 200 years. And again, it's thought that that's when horses and pigs and sheep all got let loose. Anyways, here is George Catlin, North American Indians. The Crow and Blackfeet women, like all others I have saw in any Indian tribe, divide their hair on their forehead and paint the separation or crease with vermilion or red earth. For what purpose this little but universal custom is observed, I have never been able to learn. These two tribes, whom I have spoken of connectedly, speak two distinct and entirely dissimilar languages, and the language of each is different, and radically so, from that is all other tribes about them, as these people are not always at war, and have been time out of mind. They do not intermarry, or hold converse with each other, by which any knowledge of each other's language could be acquired. It would be the work of a man's lifetime to collect the languages of all the different tribes which I am visiting, and I shall, from necessity, leave this subject chiefly for others who have the time to devote to them, to explain them to the world. The Blackfeet are perhaps the most powerful tribe of Indians on the continent, and being sensible of their strength, have stubbornly resisted the traders in their country, who have been gradually forming an acquaintance with them and endeavoring to establish a permanent and profitable system of trade. Their country abounds in beaver and buffalo, and most of the fur-bearing animals of North America, and the American Fur Company, with its unconquerable spirit of trade and enterprise, has pushed its establishments into their country, and the numerous parties of trappers are chasing up their streams and rivers, rapidly destroying the beavers which dwell in them. The Blackfeet have repeatedly informed the traders of the company that if their men persisted in trapping beavers in their country, they should kill them whenever they meet them. They have executed their threats in many instances, and the company lose some 15 or 20 men annually who fall by the hands of these people in defense of what they deem their property and their rights. Trinkets and whiskey, however, will soon spread their charm amongst these, as they have among other tribes, and white man's ferocity will sweep the prairies and their streams of their wealth to the Rocky Mountains and to the Pacific Ocean, leaving the Indians to inhabit, and at last to starve upon a dreary and solitary waste. Some very colonial thinking there, eh? Mind you, he was writing this in the early 1830s. The Blackfeet, therefore, have been less traded with and less seen by white people than most of the other tribes, are more imperfectly understood, and yet it seems to remain a question to be solved, whether there are 20 or 40 or 50,000 of them, for no one as yet can correctly estimate their real strength. I've been told that it wouldn't be much of a surprise if there were 80,000 Siksika today. From all I can learn, however, which is the best information that can be got from the traders, there are not far from 40,000 Indians altogether who range under the general domination of Blackfeet. From our slight and imperfect knowledge of them and other tribes occupying the country about the sources of the Missouri, there is no doubt in my mind that we are in the habit of bringing more Indians into the computation than are entitled justly to the Appalachian Indians into the computation, than are entitled justly to the appellation of Blackfeet. The Blackfeet proper are divided into 4 bands or families as follow: the Piegans, Bikani, of 500 lodges, the Blackfoot band of 450, the Blood of 450 lodges, and the Small Robes of 250 lodges. These 4 bands, constituting about 1,650 lodges, averaging 10 to the lodge, amount to about 16,500 souls. There is in this region a rich and interesting field for the linguistic or the antiquarian, and stubborn facts, I think, if they could be well procured, that would do away the idea which many learned gentle men entertain, that the Indian languages of North America can all be traced to 2 or 3 roots. The language of the Dakotas is entirely and radically distinct from that of the Mandans, and there's equally so from the Blackfoot and the Crows. And from the lips of Mr. Brazier, a gentleman of education and strict observation, who has lived several years with the Blackfeet and the Cheyennes, who speaks the language of tribes on either side of them, assures me that these languages are radically distinct and dissimilar. As I have above stated, and also that although he has been several years amongst these tribes, he has not been able to trace the slightest resemblance between the Blackfoot, the Cheyenne and Crow and Mandan tongues, and from a great deal of corroborating information which I have got from other persons acquainted with these tribes, I am fully convinced of the correctness of his statement. And that is a small blurb that George Catlin got of the Blackfeet. Interesting note too. In this very this ethnology, really quick, what is an ethnology as opposed to an ethnography? An ethnography is a report on a distinct culture. An ethnology is comparing and contrasting those distinct cultures. The interesting thing too about George Catlin in this book, he talks about the Blackfeet in some unflattering ways, as any colonialist will do, but he also talks about us in a flattering way. He talks about the athletic achievements of Blackfeet people, and it's pretty amazing the things that he says and how they observed. How they made this observation, I don't know. But all I know is that, they made this observation. What it is that he observed a Blackfoot, or probably, most likely Piikani, run 120 miles in 12 hours. How they were able to, how they're able to measure that, I do not know. And if I could find that blurb that he puts in here, it's pretty amazing. Because a lot of people don't know is that a runner can outrun a horse, depending on the length of the race. So there were stories in which, let's say, a white man would be gambling against a tribe, and then he would basically he would rook them as any good colonial white man would do. And he would cheat, and he'd hop on his horse and take off. And then it wouldn't be too long before he would turn around, maybe about 30 miles, and he'd see somebody running at him. And eventually, that Indian would catch up and kill him. Or he'd get away, take back the spoils that they stole from him. But this is George Catlin talking about the ideal human being. So basically, I guess he's talking about eugenics, but we'll ignore that for now. The laboring man who is using his limbs with greater parts of his life in heavy lifting sweats them with the weight of clothes which he has on him, which softens the integuments and the flesh, leaving the muscles to stand out in more conspicuous relief when they are exposed, whilst the Indian, who exercises his limbs for most of his life, denuded and exposed to the air, gets over his muscles a thicker and more compact layer of integuments, which hide them from view, leaving the casual spectator, who sees them only at rest, to suppose them to decidedly inferior to those which are found among the people of his own color. Of muscular strength in the legs, I have met many of the most extraordinary instances in Indian country that ever I have seen in my life, and I have watched and studied such for hours together, with utter surprise and admiration in the violent exertions of their dances, where they leap and jump with every nerve strung and every muscle swelled, till their legs will often look like a bundle of ropes rather than a mass of human flesh. And from all that I have seen, I am inclined to say that whatever differences there may be between the North American Indian and their civilized neighbors in the above respects, they are decidedly the result of different habits of life and modes of education rather than of any difference in constitution. And I would also venture the assertion that he who would see the Indian in a condition to judge of his muscles must see him in motion, and he who would get a perfect study for an Hercules or an Atlas should take a stone mason for the upper part of his figure, and a Comanche or a Blackfeet Indian from the waist downwards to the feet. Again, it's coming after he observed a Blackfoot running 120 miles in 12 hours. I mean, that's 6 minutes a mile. That's pretty amazing. And the way that people run, and it's this common thing. And all those, those northern peoples in the Arctic, they have thousands of words for snow or whatnot. And I don't know, but I do know the Blackfeet have quite a few words for running. And all these different ways of scurrying about the plains, right? Because that was our culture before the horse, was walking everywhere. As a matter of fact, I read in one account of this. So a lot of the elders are the ones who had the fastest horses, because again, if you were revered elder, people would give you gifts. And there's this one story of this kind of naughty dude who, not a good dude, who asked this old man if he could borrow one of his fast horses. And that old man, in an insult, just said, "Oh, you can walk, you could walk." Think of that, all those miles walking. That'd be wicked. But every day I've been kind of telling a Napi story. And again, there's so many different versions of every story too. One day Napi was walking about. It's a siko be ohkudoki. He got extremely tired and rested upon a rock. Itohkutsi umeayo. And he gave that rock this robe. Itutstoi matsitsko tu amemayo. When it got cold, he went and took back his robe. Ama ohkudoki. Ichistoki take. And then that rock got angry. And the way you say got angry, ichitokitaki. Oh, kitaki, they're angry. Ichistokitaki. They became angry. Kitumapok. And it chased Napi. So you say, oh, Kodoki, Napi. The rock began to chase Napi. Let's do it again. Oh, Kodoki, Napi. Napi. That rock began to chase Napi. Napi Napi ran for his life. To run for your life. So if I said I'm saying run for your life. And in Napi, so Napi was running. Itanistich kumix pistoix kahkitapax pomokishpiwao. So that Napi, he as he was running, he said to these nightingales, bistwigs, he said, "Might you all help me? Gachkitapax pomokipowao. Gachkitapax pomokipowao. Gachkitapax pomokipowao. Might you all help me?" So it bistwigs. So the nightingales all pooped on that rock. They were dive bombing it with their droppings. They started chip at it. Me, ochkutokskui itu teistil nach ochkutok. And now that the pile of rock, those ochkutokskui itu teistai, they are now sitting by a town called Okotoks up in Canada. Okotoks is how you say it. You know, that's what it's called in Canada. But it obviously gets its name from the Blackfoot word for rock. Okotoki. You know, and a lot of places in the United States is named after that. Named after native words, right? Okotoki. Same with, or just taken from an Indian word and whatever it's translated with, like Milk River. Uniki sisachta literally means Milk River. Also with Old Man River. But again, people say Napi tchta, but the old word is Napi utochkim. Napi's water. Napi utochkim. Napi itochkim. Since we're not on the radio right now, still waiting for this the frozen computer in our radio station unfreeze. I'm gonna give another story. Okay. Gyakki tsiniko matapi. Umutokapsio. Kennako kanapio. Kyamakea kikwa. Kyame puka. Amahka kiwi tanischu napi. Ahkunuhtsi puyob. Päätepis. Napi tanischu. Kine tania mia ki. Amai ohkutoki. Kamsuja piksennikja. Kamistaatses. Akkaapsop. Marakatsi päätäpiu. Kenne me naapi tännesche me ake saa aamokamstaan. Kam sujapiikseneki. Kamistaatses jo. Auhko katohkaapsop. Ni sojiksiko akitski päätäpi matapi madakohkaapsio. It sojipiksio. Mikä mistään matsastaatio. Kiu auhkousio. Sellaista paapukku tänne se muhk. Niitä se päätäpi. Matapio. Käymä toki ahse mikä mistään saakku tänne jo. Kiinaapi tänne se me ake. Mä ake sujapikset. Me toki. Mä ake sujapikset. Kiitsestään. Kenne me naapi tänjo. Kennohke akkaapsop. Itsestaapu. Marumaa kaksi piuuannaa piukimaaki ukos itkaapsio. Kiini sitä puukskaasu, niin tää päässänne suuannaa pio. Amaaki kuoni tänne sjö. Ahkaneste katsopa. Ahkonestänne sto, muhkanesto, niin tukaapsi matapio. Naapi ei tänne sjö. Saa akeaksesti puijuppa. Kennohkee estukaapse matapio. So again, it's always good just to hear the language without with no conflicts involved. Again, in translating it into not people creates conflict. But I'll tell the story again, but this time I'll translate it. Okay. Ken kyakki tini kohpua matapi umtkaps. So I will tell you all the story about how the people came to die. Kenno kokanapi kamakeaki yame pukao. There was that old man along with a woman and a child. Amahka ki itanische nape akun hotsi poyohup päätäpis. So that woman says to Napu, let us discuss life. Napi itanische Napi says to her, okay. Kiine tania mea kikuan ama yohkitoki kam suja piikseneki kamestaatses akkaapsop. Then that woman, she says, see this here rock, if I throw it into water, and if it sinks, akkaapsop, we will die. Madaka sipatapio, never to come back to life. Genneme napi tanischill, maaki sa amokamstan. It was then when Napi says to that woman, no, we will use this buffalo chip. Kam suya piikseniki, kamestaatsis, auhko tohkaapsop. If I throw it into the water and if it sinks, we will die for 4 days. And after those 4 days, we will come back to life, and people will not die. They will not cease to be. So he threw that buffalo chip into the water, and it didn't sink. And that woman, she had an internal debate with herself. She says, so what will it be to determine the life of people? We will use this rock. Or we will use the buffalo chip. What is it that we shall use? Ma! And then that Napi says to that woman, hey, throw that rock into the water. It's a statue. And it sank to the bottom. Genme Napi Danyo. Genoke Akokapso. It was then that Napi said, now it is determined that we shall die. It's a stop. Then he headed off. It wasn't really far that Napi got. And it was that woman's child who died. So then she ran towards that Napi and started crying at him. And that woman says to him, may we gamble upon it again. Is it again that we can talk about the reasons why we will die, why the people will die? Napi says to her, nope, we are done talking about it. Now you know why we die as a people. And I've heard that story in multiple different ways, and one of the reasons why we tell that story is fewer things. It shows that for deities to choose that, it's like gambling. But are they deities? I don't know. You can debate that. But it also goes along the theme of that life exists to appreciate it. And without death, we wouldn't appreciate it as much. Well, I've heard some people say it's because the women get the final say. And that's true, A lot of women say, I brought you into this world, I could take you out. That's just the way it goes. But these are some of the words that we'll go over. One of the things that we do too is I designed a little lesson plan that you can do you teach yourself words. And any other language revitalists out there, this is a really good thing. What we do is we take each morpheme and we color code it into its own chart, if you will. So you have all the browns, all the purples, reds, and blacks together. And they all correspond to a morpheme. But rather than trying to get people to do it remotely on YouTube, I'm just going to read these, and I'll read the translations. Big bear. Big Bear Alley. And you're from Browning, that's a very sacred word. But Big Bear. Bear Chief. Four bears. 3 bears. Six. Bear legging. Bear child. Bear medicine. Black bear. White bear. Weasel bear. Eagle bear. Imiteski, dog face. That's what a lot of AHC boys like to call me. It's fun. Imiteski, dog face. Imiteski. Boski would be a cat face. Makoiski, wolf face. Bisiski, coyote face. Bonogami deski, and a horse face. Oh man. Sixski, black face. Natuyitapi, a holy person, natuyitapi. Natuyitapi. Now, itapi is a person. Imuyitapi, hairy person. Ni soyitapi, 4 persons. That's the word for shoto. Niuksketapi, 3 persons. Natsitapi, 2 persons. Ni sitsitapi, 5 persons. Neitapi, 6 persons. Ikitsikitapi, 7 persons. Nani suitapi, 8 persons. Bihsuitapi, 9 persons. Gipitapi, 10 persons. That's just the way it works. It's so easy once you get that. Makapitapi, a bad person. Samitapi, a criminal. So natuyitapi, a holy person. Natu is holy. Not dohkyayo, a holy bear. Natuyipita, holy eagle. Natumita, a holy dog. That's what I am. Aki is woman. You put that behind anything, you got woman. Gayaki, bear woman. Well, you know, back in Iskuchtik, back in the past, in the old days, men had the word Aki in their name. So Gyayaki means bear woman, but that name was carried by a man. You know, and that goes to another discussion about gender. And I always love to go back to our language because, you know, what were our ancestors saying? One thing that's evident is that, you know, aki and ninna are verbs. The word for man and woman are verbs, whereas in English they're nouns. And nouns are static things that don't change. Whereas verbs are things that are in motion. They have flux to them, you know. And so you take ninna, man. The way you say like manhood or masculinity would be ninnais. Ninnais. And you know, you do that to I don't want to never mind. But you know, it means manhood, ninnais. Aki is woman, and akyape is like the ways of a woman, right? Akyape. Akyape. And our words for homosexuality changes whether a male or a female. And the words that have persisted is awawaki for a male homosexual. Awawaki. And whether or not these terms apply to transgendered peoples as well, I do not know. But awawaki, it refers to being kind of like a staggering woman, if you will, or a lopsided woman. And I know that's kind of a harsh translation, but it was not derogatory in any way. And what's kind of amazing to me personally as a learner is I hear that, and you know, I hear that the centralized focus of this word is aki, awawaki. It's not that they were saying a lopsided man; they were calling them a woman. But it's not an insult. Awawaki, awawaki. And then for a homosexual woman, I've heard that the word is ninskachbakyo. No, ninskitzebachbakyo. So again, ninna is a man, but moiskitzebach is a heart, Ninskitsipachpakyo, a manly hearted woman. And you got to remember that, like, these terms also did not just apply to people in their sexuality. It applied to people in what they did in life. If they performed the duties that were commonly done by women, it was wawuwak. And if a woman was doing the deeds of a man, it was ninskitsibachbak. And again, the sexuality isn't implied, but I mean, like, for instance, I heard one account of one of our real revered female warriors beat the Mahkan, Eagle Runner. And I'm gonna definitely talk about her more, and we got so many books written about her. I'm definitely gonna be reading some stuff. All you need to know is that this woman was a warrior through and through, and no one was able to outbeat her on the battlefield. And she came at a time when we were stealing horses as well, and she was one of the greatest horse stealers probably in world history. And men through all walks in life would be like, marry me, and she'd be like, well, you gotta outperform me in the battlefield. And she was never married to a man. And I remember one time someone mentioning that she actually had wives in her lodge to take care of, because she went to go hunt and she'd come back and she had wives. And as soon as I heard that, I remember asking, was she gay? And the person who I asked is like, oh no, we never had that, which is kind of an ignorance that we need to clear up. Of course, we had homosexual people. And to erase that history is to pretend that we were not human, because it's a natural thing that occurs in humanity. And if we want to make a claim that our tribe didn't have this natural thing with humanity, then we're trying to make a claim that we're beyond humans, in my mind. And that's a really dangerous thing. And then just thing about this word is, as soon as like homophobia starts seeping into our language, we start calling homosexuals, rather than awawaki, we start saying awawakikas. We added a morpheme that means now they're acting like, rather than being, now they're acting like. And that's a really interesting thing, I find. And it's worth mentioning, so the Two-Spirit movement, from my understanding, is relatively new. In terms of where that word came from, Two-Spirit, I don't know. I've heard that it may have came from the Anishinaabe, but don't quote me on that. And it's become a pan-Indian thing, but whereas I'm usually kind of anti-pan-Indian, this is something where I'm personally, as a cis male individual, I can only sit back and like encourage and be there for people, try to be an ally. But what I'm trying to get at is that although I'm usually against pan-Indian movements, this is a pan-Indian movement that was born through something that needed to happen, because a lot of bigotry within Indian country it came from the colonizer. Again, we were never racialists. We never thought of ourselves in a racial way until the white man said, "Hey, you guys are Indians. You guys should measure your blood quantum." And then a couple Indians were like, "Okay." And then now it's a whole thing. Same with homophobia. I don't believe that we had it, especially at the rates that we have now. Maybe, I mean, again, there were people who probably just sat around joking around, but whether or not there was like this violent bigotry, I don't know, and I don't think so. However, obviously, we really got that massive bigotry now in Indian country, massive homophobia in Indian country. And it's unfortunate, because that comes from the colonizer. And again, that's why I support this pan-Indian movement of Two-Spirited, because, man, people are born the way they are, and if a bunch of us are going to take that, that stance to treat them wrong for who they are, of course they're going to get together and create a group to empower and strengthen each other. But anyways, where I'm getting at is, again, that's a two-spirit movement. And then, so I remember at this conference we asked, how would you say two-spirit? And it's simple. All you do is say two-spirit, not two-dak. So no dak is my spirit. No dak. Not duka is two. Not do dak. That sounds right to me. It could be not duko dak, but it doesn't sound not duo dak. Two spirit. That's really important. No dak also refers to your shadow, because your shadow is always with you. Your spirit's always with you. No dak. And it's your presence is blocking the sun, right? Your spirit is created there, and you see it. Anyways, going back to the word list. Aki is woman. Imoyaki, hairy woman. Imoyaki. Yayaki, bear woman. Punokaki, elk woman. Punokamitaki, horse woman. You know. Awakasaki, deer woman. Pitaki, eagle woman. Mestuaki, crow woman. But not the tribe. Isapu is how you say the crow tribe. So Isapuak, a crow woman. Nichtau is river. Bear River, Bonoke, Elk River, and that's the Yellowstone. Ikinapi is gentle. So ikinapi, any istopat is ikinapi. This chair is soft. Ikinapi, a gentle person. And that's actually another thing that was worthy of talking about. See, in American society, we talk about being strong, having a strong heart, marching forward. And see, these are elements that we use for, I'd even go as far to say is patriotism. They're idioms to talk about like strength, iron fisted, and all this stuff. But for us, we would say stuff like be a gentle person. And I'll be honest, a lot of the Bikani men that I know, a lot of us are naturally kind of hard, if you could use that word, naturally strong. And rather than having the rhetoric of be strong and don't care, march forward, we have the rhetoric of, hey, chill out, be gentle. It cannot be it. We know you're tough, but chill out. Anyways. Imoyiski, hairy face. Remember Imoyaki, hairy woman. Imoyitapi, hairy person who is a Bigfoot. Imoyitapi, Bigfoot. Umakitapi is a geriatric. I don't like to translate that as old person because there's that last name that we have, old person. The way you say that is akatapi. Kind of means an ancient person. Sapoop is a plume. Sapoop, big plume. Bidasapoop, eagle plume. Sipistui sapoop, owl plume. Makoi sapoop, wolf plume. Inak sapoop, little plume. But this word, ginak sapoop, is that prized plume that you put in the front of a gummy buoys, of a straight up headdress. You put your prized plume right up front so that everyone can see it, and that's ginak sapoop. Again, back to matape, inakitape is a small person, but pukitape are those tiny people. Pukitape is those tiny people that take stuff from you. And then asitape would be a youth person, someone in their youth, like a teenager. Asitape. And umpakitape is a geriatric, inakitape, a little person. Suitape a water spirit. Suyitapi. Suyitapi. Water spirit. We treated Soyitapiks with reverence. So one of the reasons why we didn't fish or swim. Blackfeet, again, even in that book I read just a bit ago, George Catlin saying, "Oh, the Blackfeet are supposed to be the strongest people on the plains." And if you ask any of us, we're gonna go, "Heck yeah, we were. We were the greatest." But you know how to defeat us. Here's how you beat us. All you do is go off into an island in the middle of a large body of water, and we were like, "Well, I ain't gonna swim over there." Over in on Flathead Lake, there's this island called Horsecatcher Island. From my understanding, there's horses on that island still, and they would whenever the Piikani would cross the mountains to go raid the Kootenai would take their horses and swim to that island to get away from us, and we'd get there and be like, "Dang it, we just missed out, let's turn around, head back home." How do we get over there? I don't know. Because again, we swam a lot, but in rivers, but we would never swim in the lake because we were chicken. But those are the Niitxtetepi, the river people, and that's how you say Pondere. Niitxtetepi, the Pondere. And again, Asitepi is young people. So Asaki would be a young woman. Asina would be a young man. Remember, Soyitapi is a water spirit. Soyistamik, a water bull. Soyipiksi, water bird. It's soyapi, while standing in the water. It's soyopi, sitting in the water. It's sopepi, jumping in the water. It's soyohan, jumping into the river, jumping into the water again. So it's really interesting because even a lot of Algonquian languages have this grammatical feature where you talk about something happening in the water, but you don't even have to say the word water, if that makes sense. Sani e jena'at. So jena'at in Arapaho is jump. Jena'at, jump. But Sani e jena'at is she jumped into the water. Sani e jena'at. So same with Blackfoot. Ochbawan is to jump or to bound. Ochbawan. But it's soyochbawan means to jump into the water. So it's pretty cool. Remember, sapop is plume. And it's always good to go through these words that way. But bita sapop, eagle plume. Makoyi sapop, wolf plume. Sapop, big plume. So stomach, water bull. So stomach is bull. Emoy stomach, hairy bull. Stomach, big bull. Naxi stomach, little bull. Punoke stomach, elk bull. Ni stomach, buffalo bull. Gai stomach, bear bull. Stomach. Holy plume, not to sapop. Holy person, not to tapi. Holy pipe, not to man. Water pipe, man. Iron pipe, me skim man. Beaver pipe, stuck man. Dance. They're dancing. Ehbi. Not do ehbi. Holy dancer. Not do ehbi. Ehbiyak. Dancing woman. Or you can say akishbi. Right? Ehbiyaki. Dancing woman. Ehbiyaki. Dancing woman. Kshishkstaki is beaver. This actually, I'm just going to take a couple seconds. Again, one of the major emphases on this broadcast is to teach Nitsi, and obviously to go through some cultural points, and I mean that comes with our language. But part of language is even your oxystun, your throat. In order to learn language, you need to have proprioceptive functioning in your throat. You need to know where your throat's at in order to get to the next sound, and that's proprioception. And part of that is doing vocal exercises. So let's say the word beaver. Ksiskstaki. 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 Even helps if you put your teeth together and don't even move them. Ksiskstaki. 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 Now I'm going to say big beaver. Ksiskstaki. If you're really Blackfeet, you'll talk without even moving. You'll try not even moving your mouth. Big beaver. Let's say holy beaver, not doikshistaki. Not doikshistaki. Little beaver. E nakshikshistaki. E nakshikshistaki. Inokshikshistaki. White beaver. Bikshistaki. 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 Beaver woman. Ksiskstakiaki. 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 My ancestor, her name would be Beaver Eyes, but it's actually like looks like a beaver. Not looks like a beaver, but looks like a beaver. Has eyes like a beaver. Ksiskstaksapio. 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 Well, with that all being said and concluded, again, I wasn't able to get on our radio station today because we're having technical difficulties at our radio station. Normally, I would go 2 hours, depending on whether or not I have other things that I got to attend to for work. But today, I don't. And usually, I take little breaks so I can prepare by playing music on the radio. But that didn't happen today. Today I'm only on YouTube. So I'd like to thank the handful of people for tuning in and for your nice words. It really makes me feel good. Feel good because of you. I hope the program isn't. I hope you take something out of it, whether it's one word or one tidbit of one factoid. Because our language truly is a wonder. Through it, we get all these understandings of how we approach life. Like, the sun is rising, but what you're saying is that sun is crawling up. The sun is crawling underneath. And with these terms, once you start getting them within the language, it's no longer abstract. When you talk about, the world is alive, because any boom is alive, the earth. And it's unfortunate that it took all these years for colonialists to go, hey, you know what? Those Indians, they were right. You're getting that with the fires. And obviously, if you're here, you already think that way. So there's a lot of rhetoric I don't necessarily need to go over, But again, it's just, they were asking us, all these medicines that you have, how did you learn it? And we're like, stuck in by observing the beaver. And they would, oh, well, the beaver taught them medicine. All these Indians, they are superstitious. And then years later, in the 90s, a word was coined, zoopharmacognosy, meaning animals having the cognitive abilities to figure out pharmaceuticals, medicines. And the doctor who got it probably got tenure, probably got an award, whereas the Indians who were telling white people this 100 years back, they got their kids taken from them. It's real. It's a real tragedy. Often, I'll laugh about it because laughter helps heal that. But it's really frustrating to know that as we Indigenous people go back and listen to our ancestors, it's the same process of young Matapiks, young people today, going and looking at peer-reviewed research. What our elders are saying was all peer-reviewed. It was massively peer-reviewed. Thousands of years of peer-reviewed research that they were talking about. So it's amazing the way that things like that have worked. Again, the more you go back, the more you're going to find out that ni Sitapi were right all along. Often we talk about how the sun created us and how the sun will revisit us. And again, when these early ethnographers were hearing us, oh, the sun created the earth, all these Indians are superstitious. And then you actually look at what's it called? The nebular tidal wave theory, I believe it's called. Maybe that's the old term. But where the sun's formation is the reason why the earth was able to form. So the sun did create us. And how we say the sun will revisit us. In astronomy or cosmology, you learn that our sun is eventually going to expand so big that it will actually reach where we are at. It will revisit us. We have stories of the moon once being part of the earth. And now that's what a lot of people will say. That the earth, scientists will say that at one point the moon is a part of the earth. Were Nitsitapi there to observe that? I don't think so. But how we found out, in my mind, through a spiritual type of science, And to explain that, just really quick, the last thing I'll explain is that my mentor, Neachet Grey Morning, is the one who said this, is that a ceremony is like, what you do in a ceremony and singing all these songs in the process. Because, in a ceremony, there could be 200 songs and you have to sing them all correctly. And if you get one wrong, you got to start all back over. But it's like aligning all the positive and negative charges in a magnet. And then once they're aligned properly, they connect and they open a door. And that's what's happening in a sweat lodge. Is you're doing the ceremony and you're doing all the proper procedures, and the next thing that Kitsamas, that spirit door will open, which enables the spirits to come in and out freely. It's another reason why a lot of Indigenous people are very protective and cautious over ceremony, because often someone could perform a ceremony incorrectly and open doors and windows that they don't know how to shut, or doors and windows that they oughtn't to open at all. So really what I'm trying to say is that a sweat lodge is more like a nuclear power plant than church. So think about that for a while. Anyways, get a matson. Get to Again.